Setting up, it's thinking. Okay. Now, hopefully I don't get myself an echo. That would be terrible. Setting up. Okay, get rid of that. Okay. All right, I think we're good to go. Thank you so much for your patience. You know that these, even though we've been doing this for quite some time, there's still a lot of bells and whistles and things that you have to click on to make sure everything is underway. So I do want to thank everyone for being here today. My name is Marquita Thomas. I'm the Executive Director of the Los Angeles LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I would like to welcome you today to today's Sheriff's Forum. We have 5 candidates participating today who are running in the June 8th first round election for LA County Sheriff. This event is produced by the LAGLCC's Heritage Committee, sponsored by the Los Angeles LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, and it is the first LGBTQ forum for the candidates running for LA County Sheriff. The LAGLCC felt that this is such a critical race. We wanted to host our own forum so our constituents in the business community can learn more about the candidates' platforms, their records as it relates to inclusion and equity, and their stances on public safety in general and LGBTQ equity in particular. This program is streaming on the LAGLCC's YouTube channel, and a link will be provided for the recording in our next e-newsletter. So today you're going to hear from Chief Robert Luna, Chief Cecil Rambo, Captain Britta Steinbrenner, Lieutenant Eric Strong, Chief Eli Vera, and they were listed in alphabetical order as not to suggest any particular preference. And the way today's program will go is I will ask a few questions and then we will open it up to our audience. So please use the Q&A feature, to ask questions. So before we get into the hard-hitting questions, we want to get to know you each just as people. So we have your bios, and we're going to provide that in the chat for if people want a longer bio, but I'd just like to hear from each one of you. So if you could introduce yourself, tell us your background and why you're running to be the next LA County Sheriff. I will call on you in no particular order. I'm going to start with Chief Cecil Rambo.
Well, thank you. Thank you for hosting this. This is really important. I'm really honored to be here. I'll be very brief. I'm actually adopted from a Korean orphanage, and I've been here in Los Angeles since I was about 6 months old. My parents were African American and lived in Compton, and we moved to South Central where I grew up and graduated from local public school, Washington High. I have a degree in sociology from Humboldt State University. I joined the Sheriff's Department in 1981 and rose to the rank of assistant sheriff and worked a variety of assignments, including undercover narcotics for the FBI, internal affairs twice. I worked at West Hollywood for just about 5 years, from '89 to just before the '94 earthquake. I was also the Asian organized crime lieutenant, where we did outreach to the API community. And I also led the AB 109 Prison Reform Community Corrections Partnership Alliance, how it rolled out here in Los Angeles County at that time. When I retired from the Sheriff's Department in 2014, I was recruited to be an assistant city manager in the city of Carson. And I did that for about 2.5 years. I was a city manager in the city of Compton. And now I'm currently the chief of police at LAX and Van Nuys airports, where we secure the safety for about 89 to 90 million passengers a year. I'm running for sheriff because take away the fact that I'm biracial, and it'll be historic for an African-American or API sheriff. I'm the most qualified person to ever have run for this seat ever in the history of the department or in the history of LA County. I know every one of the candidates in this forum. I've worked with some of them closely, and I have a high regard and high respect for all of them. But I humbly, would like for you guys to endorse and embrace me and understand that I have a long history of working in the LGBTQ community for going back 30 years. And so that's Cecil in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, Chief Rambo. I appreciate that. Next up, we are going to hear from Lieutenant Eric Strong.
Hello, good afternoon. And Marquita, thank you, as Cecil said, so much for putting this on. I know this is extremely valuable time for us to be able to talk about some of the things that are important. I was born and raised here in Los Angeles County. I've been in law enforcement for close to 30 years now, spanning over 3 agencies. I have run the gamut of the things that you can do. I have worked from some of the most violent, crime-ridden neighborhoods to some of the most affluent neighborhoods, probably in the country. And the thing that I learned is that it doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what neighborhood you're policing, compassion, courtesy, respect, that's the essence of what we should be policing with. A lot of my time is spent working with our youth, community services, working with kids, putting together programs, doing character development. I have a lot of experience in our patrol, our courts, and our custody functions. I worked internal affairs for many years. I was a unit commander at our Advocacy Bureau, Audit and Accountability Bureau, as well as our South LA station, and I was Operation Lieutenant at several of those assignments as well. The main thing for me is that it's time that we do something different. Where we are right now is not where we have to be. Our headlines do not have to be about deputy gangs, about bad shootings, about abuses in our jails. It's there because we've had failed leadership throughout the years, and we haven't taken the steps necessary to correct these things. And now it's just come to a head, and people are tired of it, and people are looking for something different. I'm endorsed by Stonewall Democratic Club, excuse me, because they know I bring the essence of community first. One of the things that I know that I will do is bring stakeholders to the table. And it's one thing to just have a seat at the table. It's yet another to actually have a voice at the table. And what I'm looking for is people from all communities, from all walks of life, to be there, to be part of the policy, to be part of the decision-making processes so that we can come to a community engagement, community first organization. And that's why I'm running. I fear for my kids. I fear for the children, and I fear for the citizens of Los Angeles County if we don't do something different, and if we don't do it now. So I humbly come to you, and I look forward to the questions. I look forward to any dialogue that we have, and ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Strong. Next up, Captain Britta Steinbrenner.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. Britta Steinbrenner, and I'm running for sheriff. I have 35 years with this department with an exemplary record. I'm currently a captain assigned to County Services Bureau, where I oversee 450 employees, 6 county hospitals, 85 libraries, and 320 county buildings. We provide security and general law enforcement, and it's a $130 million contract that I supervise and watch over every year. But with that, prior to that, I worked custody, I worked patrol. I spent 2 years at West Hollywood as a watch commander. I also was the captain of Sheriff's Information Bureau and the Community Partnerships Bureau. At the age of 48, I went back to school to get my bachelor's and my master's in business administration. And as an adult learner, we are never too old to learn. Learning opens the key of opportunity. The reason why I'm running, because our department has no leadership, no vision, and we lost our moral compass. We are truly a rudderless and an engineless ship that is just floating out to sea. And if something doesn't get done, we are going to crash and burn and sink. And so many of us talk about homelessness. We talk about the increase in crime. We talk about the mentally ill. But my primary focus is bringing credibility and community policing back to this department. That's how I grew up on the department in 1986, is where we were interacting with the community and there was a relationship and a partnership, because everybody has to feel safe, welcomed, and secured in the community that they work and they live in. And so my whole preference for running is because I want to be the sheriff for the people, someone who is firm, fair, and just, and not focusing on how many endorsements I can earn, how much money I can raise, because some of these candidates, as one in particular, they can give gifts and things in return. And I'm just the grassroots where you start from the bottom, you brand yourself, because I am running because there were deputies who asked me to run. And this is going to be a wholesome campaign where it's very transparent, very honest. But I can only do that with the voters' help. And what makes it very unique is I am a female candidate running for sheriff. We've never had a female sheriff. We've never had a female candidate up until now. But it's opening up new doors of opportunity. I work in a male-dominated career field, so it's taught me to be tough. It taught me to communicate. It taught me never to give up, and it taught me to be solution-oriented. So with your support, with the voters' vote, I think we can make some definite change. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Steinbrenner. Next up, we have Chief Luna.
Well, good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for doing this. This is a lot of work to put something like this together. My name is Robert Luna, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm running to be your next sheriff. I'm running to reduce crime, to make our streets safer, to impact homelessness, and to restore public trust, reform and modernize the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, specifically the Office of the Sheriff himself, and to make this department a 21st century Sheriff's Department, which it is not currently. I'm the only candidate in this race from outside the Sheriff's Department. That means I'm the only candidate who I believe can deliver true reform to make this a forward-thinking organization, open to change and innovation. As a Long Beach police chief for the last 7 years, I have led the second largest police department in LA County. I have been accountable to our public in Long Beach and have taken responsibility for the actions of our department. And if you're familiar with Long Beach, Long Beach is a very large, diverse and progressive city. And actually, we have one of the largest LGBTQ plus communities in the state and the country. And the city of Long Beach has received awards for being one of the most friendly LGBTQ plus communities around. I'm very proud of that during my last 7 years as chief and beyond, because I had 36 years total there. Just a little bit about my background. I grew up in a Latino working class immigrant family in unincorporated East Los Angeles who only spoke Spanish. I actually used to translate for them. Because of that, I unfortunately witnessed a lot of social inequity. That's what grounded me. That's what inspired me to seek a career in law enforcement. And it also really grounded me in what I call relationship-based policing, which you'll see in a lot of my answers that I give in the questions you're going to ask for. I have a reputation for listening, problem solving, and being able to work in partnership with any community and all communities. That's where my experience is. I have 7 years body of work to prove and show that. And I have earned many endorsements, including that of Robert Garcia, who introduced me when I announced my candidacy. And he's one of not only a Democratic leader in the state, but an LGBTQ plus leader in a lot of the things he's doing. With that, I turn it back over to you and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Luna. And finally, we have Chief Vera.
Good afternoon, Marquita. Thank you so much for having us. I want to echo what everyone else said. We know how much work it takes to put something like this on, so thank you for giving us this opportunity. A little bit about myself. I'm a native-born Angelino. My mother immigrated to this country with my sister. I was born in a county hospital near downtown Los Angeles, raised in Section 8 housing in LA. I'm a product of the Los Angeles Unified School District. I'm a veteran of the United States Marine Corps, where I served as a Presidential Honor Guard. I've been a member of the Sheriff's Department for some 33 years. I spent half of my career working in patrol, specifically in South Los Angeles. I've worked every major division on the department. I'm a former SWAT commander and a tactical expert on the department. And I've promoted through the ranks up through division chief, each and every rank. Most importantly, I'm a balanced individual who has invested heavily back into the communities that we've served. When I was a commanding officer over South Los Angeles, I created opportunities for our at-risk children, whether they be mentoring, whether it would be tutoring, whether it be training. I partnered with local businesses to create job opportunities for them. I did things before it was common to do, some of these things, because I recognize that we need to get to the core issue on why crime is what it is in Los Angeles. And a lot of it is based on the fact that we haven't invested sufficiently in our kids. That's why, as a private citizen, my wife and I were foster parents. We fostered children that we encountered in patrol in the field, kids that we dealt with firsthand that were falling into the foster care system and possibly into the criminal justice system. And we had the honor of opening the doors to our home to these kids because having been raised in the environment that we were raised in, very financially challenged neighborhoods of Los Angeles and from families that didn't have a whole lot. Now that we were doing a little bit better, it was our chance to give back in a totally different way and model, what it truly is to, look for the redeemable values in every person that we contact, regardless of the circumstances that we find them in. So today I'm running for sheriff because I've never experienced the division that I've seen in Los Angeles County. And unfortunately, the leader of this organization has fanned those flames tremendously. And rather than lowering the temperature across Los Angeles, we've seen those flames stoked over and over again. And I find that to be a huge problem. But more importantly, as a 33-year member of this department and a current executive, I understand the strengths and the weaknesses of this department. I understand how to get things done, but I also understand the limitations of how much change you can affect unless you're the elected sheriff. Because at the end of the day, that's where you get your true authority. And the one thing that I have that separates me from everyone else is the fact that I've currently earned the respect of the men and women in this organization at a very high level, not because I'm necessarily the most popular executive on the department, but because I've been the most balanced. And I look for the same redeemable values in them, as long as I want them to understand that when they fall short, that they need to be honest, that they need to come forward, with their shortcomings, that we learn from our mistakes. And we absolutely will not, and I have not tolerated, crossing those lines. They know that that's not going to be accepted. So it's that balanced policing. And I believe that as someone who understands this organization very well in county governance, that I will be able to affect change in a much faster manner than anyone else, especially coming in for someone from the outside, because we just had that the last sheriff ago, and great man that had great intentions and had tremendous experience, but it took him 4 years to learn this organization. And as a result, we saw the failures in his administration, and that's why he's not here today. So that's Eli Vera. That's why I'm running for sheriff. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Chief Vera. Before I get to the next question, I did want to mention a few things. First, I wanted to say that Sheriff Villanueva was invited to this forum. I did not get a confirmation from his office, but I did want to let everyone know that he was in fact invited, so that information was out there. Also, I just wanted to acknowledge the LAGLCC wants everyone to be heard, but we also want to provide a very safe environment for our candidates as well as our community. And as this is the first and perhaps the only LGBTQ forum, we wanted to provide a space where we could reduce Zoom bombing or any sort of ugly language or any sorts of attacks against the community or the candidates. So we chose to do this webinar style, but we are very receptive to your questions. We do want your questions. You can put them either in the chat or the Q&A. And I just wanted to just let everyone know that this was not to stifle anyone's voices or to keep a barrier between the candidates and the audience. We just really wanted to provide a very safe environment for everyone. So I just wanted to say those two things before we moved on. So, okay, we're going to get into our questions now. I want to ask, why is it important for business owners to have a relationship with their local law enforcement? And I'm going to just call on folks in any particular order. And if you could keep your answers to about 2 minutes, that would be amazing. And we're going to start with Chief Luna.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the question. Law enforcement plays a real vital role in revitalizing neighborhoods, both business and residential. Quality law enforcement increases both public safety and quality of life, which can attract new people and development. In the city of Long Beach, we had $5 billion worth of development. It's been very successful. We in law enforcement were at the table. As the chief of police in Long Beach, I was a big part of that. I made sure that the Long Beach Police Department was included in the revitalization efforts and a part of the conversation with the downtown business community with new development. That way people feel safe, that the police department is engaged, fully engaged, and a partner, considered a partner in that venture. When people and businesses come together in areas, people spend more money, they increase the tax base, and we all benefit collectively, which is very important. I look forward to building a personal relationship with all of our business partners, and we'll commit that the Sheriff's Department will also participate in ongoing development conversation, as well as everything that we did in Long Beach. But collaboration and partnerships is a must. We have to consistently communicate and make people feel safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Luna. Chief Rambo.
Yeah, I kind of echo Chief Luna's response, but I will tell you, having worn several hats as a city manager and as a commanding officer and as a commanding officer in a city like Compton, where economic development was really, really stifled by the level of crime that was there. One of the feathers in my hat was when I finally, when I left after 3 years, they were bringing a Starbucks in. That was because of the relationship we had built in the community, as well as bringing the crime rate down to the point where they could actually bring in a Starbucks. And then I came back years later, and we brought in, there's now an In-N-Out Burger there, and there's a lot of other economic development projects that we were bringing to the table as a result of those relationships. So it's very important. When I was a captain in Compton, we had a special problems team. They were assigned to go out and work with the business owners to address quality of life issues. So there's, as a sheriff, I would like every station to have someone assigned that is the Chamber of Commerce liaison, the liaison with the City Hall, liaison with the other business owners as they come into the city, or if they have questions involving either homelessness, code enforcement issues, or any other problems that they may have in terms of the economic development of the community. We did it in West Hollywood years ago. I've got 30 plus years of doing this. We did foot patrols in West Hollywood based upon some issues we had, along Santa Monica Boulevard. So rather than stay in the cars, I was a sergeant that led a team that actually did foot patrols on Sunset as well as Santa Monica, and interacted directly with business owners, got to know them by name. And those kinds of relationships are vitally important for the economic viability of a city.
Thank you so much, Chief Rambo. I also want to encourage the candidates. There are quite a few questions coming into the Q&A. So if you'd like to respond to any of those, feel free to do so while we're getting through our other questions. I want to make sure everyone is heard. We do have a time limit for today's program. So we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible. But if the candidates do want to respond to those questions in the Q&A, that would be fantastic. Lieutenant Strong, why is it important for business owners to have a relationship with their local law enforcement?
Like the other candidate said, I mean, it's all important. Look, crime is only going to be impacted when everybody's involved. We have to have a relationship with business owners because we need their help just as much as they need ours. Right now there's kind of a built-in mechanism that I was a part of when business people or want to get a liquor license, for example, they go through, there's a county process for approval. And part of that process or that approval or that recommendation comes from the sheriff's department. And what we look at is the business owner cooperating with things like no trespassing? Are they being part of the solution as opposed to contributing to the problem? So we all need to be at the table to have these conversations to make things better. One of the things that I want to bring in that I think is vitally important is a real-time crime center. There's other agencies out there that have it. And basically what that is it partners with business owners, small businesses, liquor stores, gas stations, any place. And when they put a camera up, it allows them to link directly to the local law enforcement. And it becomes a partnership that we bring in where, they have a direct link, they have a direct button, and also that camera has built-in automated triggers in it that if there's some type of activity going on, it will notify law enforcement. These are just some of the tools and things that we can use to partner with local businessmen and women. And I'm sorry, one of the things that it does is it gets the business owners vested into the community. We know that sometimes small businesses, the owners may not live in the community. Maybe they're there and they're doing business. And I think that's important to get them vested into the community so that they can really have a care and understanding beyond their operating hours, what's really going on. I think we're only going to solve this issue with crime when people are involved. And if we can get business owners, then that is going to open the door to get other organizations such as our churches, our community block clubs, and just get people involved and being a part of the solution. So it's very important, as the other candidate said, building these relationships is vital to every community. And every community is a little bit different. They all have different needs. So these are some of the things that I would encourage all of our deputies to go out, know your business owners, know what's in your area, know what's on your patrol beat, get to know who the owners are, get to know what their problems are. The thing that we have to do too is a lot of times business owners, they want people to come in and they want people to, support their business. So therefore, and especially in some communities like Compton and South LA, they don't want to be the one calling the police. So we need to implement strategic ways where they can notify us if something's going on, if there's a robbery, if there's people loitering, if there's people calling problems. And that's only going to come with relationships.
Thank you. Captain Steinbrenner.
Thank you. So it's important for us to have a relationship with the business owners because it brings back our community policing philosophies, which is the center of why we're here. So it builds relationship and partnerships with all aspects, the business, the community, clergy, but it also gives us the opportunity to partake in community events, both from the department and from the community business aspect. There's a sense of feeling of comfort and protection. It gives them that confidence to report crimes of all kinds without any type of fear or hesitation. And it also gives us the opportunity to address areas that need extra patrol or that are problematic. In essence, the business owners are the eyes and ears for law enforcement. We can't be everywhere. So if there's a phone call, if they're the eyes and ears, we can respond, we can address the problematic areas. And it also gives an opportunity for us to share our community plans or department policies. For instance, I spent a lot of time lately writing all my plans of what I plan to address and accomplish when I'm in office. And one of them is smash and grabs. And that has been going on since November of last year. And there's not a lot of emphasis put on it, but business owners are suffering. In a 2-week span, there were 11 business owners that were affected and $300,000 in merchandise were lost. So I want to be able to have that avenue to share what my plans are, what my policies are. And it will also help to eliminate hate crimes. Everyone should feel welcomed and safe in their community. So we'll have task forces out there, and I want the task forces to be able to relate and work with the business owners to find out what the issues are. So it lessens the fear, it's a quicker response time, but in all honesty, it creates a relationship where we're working together and it unites law enforcement and the community together so we can be one team. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Steinbrenner. Yes, thank you. And next, Chief Thura.
Yes, actually, I think the question should be flipped. It's incumbent upon law enforcement even more so to have those relationships, with our businesses, because at the end of the day, if our business, if we in law enforcement are able to create a safe environment for our local businesses, our businesses thrive. And if our businesses thrive, then they stimulate the local economy. If the local economy is stimulated, then we're creating jobs with living wage opportunities, for our residents in those particular communities. And like the candidates were saying, it is critical. It's based on relationships. So what I did, it's not something that I plan on doing. It's something that I've actually done and will take to a higher level if elected sheriff, is I created local business councils and the stations that I oversaw. And I met with them and ensured that the leadership of the station met with those local business councils on a monthly basis, because it was critical for me to interact and listen to them specifically as to their concerns, whether it's crime issues or any other issues that are impacting that local business. As the chief law enforcement officer of that area, you have to know what's going on, how you can partner with them, how you can assist with them. And what happened for me is that we became a lot more responsive to their needs, and we built a bit of a coalition. What that led to was opportunities that we hadn't seen before. I'll give you a perfect example. Under my leadership, we were rebuilding, and I wasn't doing this, obviously, it was Food for Less on Western and Imperial. They were completely redoing the Food for Less at that location, but because I had a close working relationship with the general manager and I understood her needs, I was made aware of the fact that she was having at the time a really difficult time of hiring and keeping entry-level employees. Well, I was having a hard time keeping our kids that were turning 16 years old in our programs that we had in the sheriff's department, because they had no other choice but to go to work for a McDonald's or a Burger King to help, bring money, into their homes. So I partnered with her, and over the course of 2 years, she hired every one of the kids that actually applied for that, and we were able to retain them in our after school programs. And those are the relationships that help everyone across the board. And that's why it's important to have that cohesive relationship, that close working relationship, the face-to-face communication with those business owners so that we can succeed across Los Angeles County.
Thank you so much, candidates. We have a lot more questions. I'm going to try to consolidate as many as I can because there are some common themes in some of these questions. So we know that communities of color and members of the LGBTQ community have a complicated relationship with law enforcement. There's been a lot of historical trauma and distrust. So what is your personal record of addressing discrimination against LGBTQ, communities of color, and other marginalized communities? And how would you work to rebuild trust in these communities? And that I'm just going to kind of raise your hand and then I'll call on you as I see you. Chief Thura?
Just real quick, you cut off I think you accidentally.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just saying I couldn't hear you.
Oh, my apologies. My apologies. So I was just basically acknowledging that communities of color and members of the LGBTQ community have a complicated relationship with law enforcement. There's been a lot of historical trauma and distrust, and I just wanted to hear your personal record of addressing discrimination against LGBTQ, communities of color, and other marginalized communities, and how you would work to rebuild trust in these communities. Chief Thura? Sure.
And I'll be careful on how I word this because I don't want to hit any triggers. One of the most trying experiences that I had and heartbreaking experiences that I've had on the Sheriff's Department came while I was working patrol, specifically in the Walnut Park, Huntington Park area. and it involved a number of homicides of transgender women that, because of the circumstances that they found themselves in, and just really not having any other opportunities to provide for themselves, had been working as sex workers. And I personally was involved in a couple of investigations in which they were the victim of a brutal homicides. At that point, I didn't realize the level of hatred and cruelty that was displayed towards them. And it was a tremendous eye-opening experience for me. So I made it a personal point, a personal mission, not only as a deputy sheriff, but when I worked on these special enforcement teams to ensure that we were properly policing those neighborhoods, not so much to enforce John operations, but to ensure that that very vulnerable part of the community wasn't being targeted. I've always led from the front. I've modeled, tolerance and respect for everyone, and I believe that it starts at the top with the sheriff. One of the things that I find very troubling is, what we've seen coming out of the sheriff's department, probably what's motivating many of the men and women that are here on this call today running for sheriff is, we've seen the current incumbent call the female board members of the sheriff's department or the board of supervisors some very problematic names, and modeled a complete disregard and disrespect for those that have differing opinions from us in law enforcement. And what message does that send our deputy sheriffs? So again, I'm somebody that has modeled tolerance and respect from the onset, from the beginning, and that is what I will stand for, continue to stand for, and make sure that our deputies represent in our communities.
Does anyone else want to take on this question before we move on to the next one? Lieutenant Strong.
Yeah, in terms of having a history of things, I tell you a quick story is I remember being a junior in high school, and this was back in the 80s, and there was a senior, and he asked a question about if he wanted to bring a guy to the prom, if it would be allowed. And there were several students that basically threatened him. And actually one of the students was a friend of mine, threatened him, and they told him if he brought a guy to the prom, that they were going to basically, beat him up. I was kind of a big guy on campus. I was one of the top athletes in the school. I had a lot of respect from a lot of people. And I just remember standing up and saying, no, you won't. And I remember his name was George. And I said, George, you get to bring whoever you want to go with you to the prom. And if you have any problems, you let me know and I'll deal with it. And people looked at me and they said, hey, well, are you serious, Eric? And I said, absolutely. I couldn't have told you in 1986 what I was doing. I couldn't have told you back then that I was standing up for LGBTQ plus, or back then just kind of gay and lesbian rights. What I could tell you was that what I was doing was standing up for somebody who had every ounce of my respect as a human being, and he had the right to be who he was. And, my parents, that's how they raised me. I have a lot of LGBTQ plus family members, and since I was a little kid, at my grandmother's table, at my parents' table, everybody came and got a plate. So when we talk about, what have we done? What's our record? My record doesn't come from a job assignment. It doesn't come from job duties or responsibilities based on where I'm assigned or what I'm doing. It comes from my heart. It comes from my upbringing. I have stood up for many people, be they, of API, LGBTQ plus, and that's just who I am. And one of the things that I talk about is oftentimes in the sheriff's department, we have seen people of color, people of different orientation promoted and given assignments. And oftentimes it's really just a checkbox. And if I can get a woman in there and a black woman that's LGBTQ plus, I could check 3 boxes with once. And we all know that there's one thing to have a seat at the table. It's another to have an actual voice at that table. And, you know, with the sheriff's department, it goes back to a lot of times also the promotional process, especially into the executive ranks. You know, so we need to change a lot of things. But with me, there will always be a partnership there. There will always be a level of absolute respect. And so my track record is not something that I can tell you about all of the different times and all of the different assignments and all of the different things that I've done, you know, while working. I can just tell you of all of the things that are in my heart and the type of person I am, the type of person I was raised to be.
Thank you, Lieutenant Strong. Next, we've got Chief Rambo, and then Chief Luna and Captain Steinbrenner in that order. So Chief Rambo.
Yeah, thanks. Again, I really don't have to struggle with answering this question. One, it's my core values as a person to make sure that we're treating everyone respectfully and with dignity. I, like many, you know, LGBTQI people, don't come from just one family. They come from all families. My experience with this goes back as far as when AIDS epidemic first came out, and people forget. A lot of the members of this particular group here were too young to remember how acrimonious that was, and how, as a young sergeant in the field, I had to make sure that I had a team that really ensured the safety of the community as they were protesting in the streets, literally right there at San Vicente and Santa Monica for days on end. And then moving forward, I was, you know, the one who embraced the LGBTQI groups inside the organization. We have advisory commissions, advisory groups. I was that person who led the Community Law Enforcement Partnership Program, as well as the internal groups inside the Sheriff's Department that dealt with people who had like-minded issues within the organization, be it Black peace officers, LGBTQ officers, or any other subgroup. I was also the international liaison person who also worked out of Sheriff's Headquarters Bureau. So my values go back a long way. Now let's talk specifically about something that I did in Compton. Compton was taking over that contract was very, very emotional for the citizens of Compton. By the time I left after 3 years of community engagement, building youth centers, building relationships in the community, Compton is the only contract in the Sheriff's Department that it takes a vote of the people to actually get rid of. And that's a result of all the work and really the leadership that I brought to Compton, as well as the leadership that I demonstrated and brought the deputies in who embraced the community, and the community at that time really loved the Sheriff's Department. And that is the only contract that requires a vote to get rid of that contract.
Thank you, Chief Rambo. Chief Luna.
Yeah, I believe from leading from the top and leading by example. You go in there day one and you just lay out, this is the way it's going to be. There's some things you can be flexible on, and there's some things you're not going to be flexible on. Discrimination or treating somebody different is not acceptable under any circumstances, and that's how you start off the conversation. For me, it's not just about me as a police executive. For me, it's personal. I've grown up, and I mentioned this earlier, where I witnessed a lot of social inequity for a lot of reasons. My brother is gay. Very proud of my brother, and he's one of the people I love most on this earth. I've seen some of the trial and tribulations he's gone through. That has assisted me in my career in law enforcement, where I have been very collaborative with anybody, whether they're the color of their skin, race, culture, sexual orientation, religious preference. I mean, just whatever it was, I was there. I was intentional about relationships with any and all groups, specifically with LGBTQ plus, being involved in the pride parades, getting other employees out there who were afraid to come out. I even have stories of other members of other law enforcement agencies who walked over to me and they said, hey, my department doesn't even allow this. And I said, hey, not only can you march with us, if you're interested, our department, our recruiting efforts are very open to everybody and anybody, because we want true representation in Long Beach. And because I already talked about the population and the demographics we have, it was always something that was a big part of everything we did and do. Over my 7 years of being the chief in Long Beach, I actually earned 8 different awards, humanitarian type awards from different organizations, including LGBTQ plus organizations, for my collaborative work in everyday business, including dealing with hate crimes and some other awful things that end up happening with our specific LGBTQ plus community. I encourage you for anybody to contact people in Long Beach to find out what kind of efforts I did. I'm not just talking. Again, I say this isn't theory. I've actually practiced it. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And Captain Steinbrenner.
Thank you. I want to say that I have a really good track record because I invest in my employees and I get to know them. I get to learn their first names. I don't allow any type of mistreatment. And I have a philosophy that it doesn't matter the color of your skin, your gender preference, where you live, what your wealth is. It's what you have inside. And my bureau currently, we deal with the Department of Mental Health, Department of Public Social Services, where you have people from all various backgrounds, ethnicities, and minorities that come for services, and you can never turn them around. And you always have to look at the person from the inside out. But my interaction and my introduction to the LGBTQIA community came when I was a deputy and started in 1987. And I was very sheltered. I had very strict European parents. And so that's when I first got introduced or surrounded by fellow deputies that were either of the LGBTQ, whether they were at the time it was lesbian or gay. And then when I came to West Hollywood Sheriff Station, I have to give the community and the business owners a lot of credit because they could feel that I was a little uncomfortable. This was a brand new station. I had never worked in this environment. And they embraced me and they provided opportunities for me to sit down and have coffee with them and ask questions. And it was so enlightening because there's fears. People don't want to talk about it. People don't want to say what their feelings are or how they're being treated. And that was the first opportunity for me to start building relationships. And then I had deputies that were of that origin. And so we went on ride-alongs. I went out on patrol with them for 1 or 2 hours. And that really gave me an honest insight of what I need to do as a leader to make sure that everyone feels welcomed. And so regardless of who you are, how you look, we're all people and we need to work together. And so I don't have any exciting stories to share because I've just had a very blessed and stable career. And I always put the community or the employee first. Thank you.
Thank you. We have so many amazing questions that have come in the Q&A. We just have a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to kind of do one question, one candidate, just to get through some of these questions. I know that you're all very busy. As a candidate myself, I know that you've got a lot going on, so I'm going to let you get back to it in just a couple minutes, but I'm just going to call on someone and choose a question, and then I'm just going to kind of do it rapid fire. So for Chief Rambo, the question is, legislative changes on law enforcement and policing policies are happening around the country. Are there any happening here in LA for California or around the country that you consider important? And if so, what is your position?
Yeah, I think the two that come to mind that I actually help work on are the addressing law enforcement gangs here in the state of California, because it's not just LA Sheriff's Department, it's other agencies too. I work with Mike Gibson on that assembly bill, and also the decertification of officers who've been fired for serious offenses so that they cannot be recycled to another agency, either in the state or out of state. And I work with Senator Steve Bradford on that. So those are things that are right now law in the state. but there's also laws that have been implemented about de-escalation here in the state, the use of force, how we use force, and how we actually are required to de-escalate uses of force. There's laws that have been implemented on how we retain and have our body cams and our video cam data. So all of those reforms I fully support.
Thank you, Chief Rambo. Lieutenant Strong, you offered to answer this question live. How will you work with social service departments to develop a better Angelino society as a strategy to prevent crime from happening?
No, I have said repeatedly that we have some significant problems within our county, within our world. Mental illness is a serious problem. The unhoused, our homelessness is a serious problem. Addiction is still a serious problem. And we're not going to find the solutions to any of those inside of a jail cell. What we need is resources and services that are going to provide sustainable fixes. Right now, LA County Jail System is the largest mental health hospital around, and there's something wrong with that. I'm the only candidate that has spoken out and voted no or stated no to supporting building a new men's central jail. Here's why. We need the beds, we need the services that are going to be sustainable. We don't need to put people in for 2 weeks, let them out with 3 to 5 days worth of medication, and then a month later, they're right back where they were. We need people that come out better than when they went in. So that's what I look forward to, is working collaboratively with alternatives to education, care before jails, and finding solutions. And that will also free up a lot of law enforcement's time to go and focus on some of the more serious crimes, the smash and grabs, the homicide rate that is up. We need to focus on things that are really law enforcement issues. Right now, the reason law enforcement is the one that responds to all these things, because we're basically the only ones that answer the phone 365, 24/7. So what we need to work with our county, with our elected officials. And if that means that we need to reallocate some of our budget, some of our resources, some of our equipment, some of our office space to create systems that allow people the true services that they need, I'm all for that. So I think that's important to note. And it's also something that my family has, suffered from. I have many of my family members that have been incarcerated, that have suffered from addiction. So it's something that's very near and dear to me. I think it's necessary that we provide, even when people are in our jails, we need to also provide educational resources. We need to provide job opportunities. We need to provide certifications. Oftentimes they're in there doing work and they come out and they have no work to go to. They have no employment to go to. Why? Because we use their labor for the benefit of ourselves, and they did not get any education credits. They did not get any certification. They walk out no better than when they went in, and that needs to change.
Thank you, Lieutenant Strong. I know the city of West Hollywood is developing a behavioral crisis response unit to address exactly what you're saying, to dispatch people in non-violent situations to de-escalate certain situations, and it frees up your time to address more violent issues. And also it de-escalates the situation because there are no sirens, there's no flashing lights, and those sorts of things can sometimes make a situation worse. So I know that that's something that's being worked on here in West Hollywood, where I am. Chief Luna, what is your position regarding adjusting, improving, or ending qualified immunity?
I think that this is an issue of public trust, and there are many people who have concerns about what law enforcement is moving towards. I was serving before I retired on the executive board for Major City Chiefs as a Western Region representative. So I sat at the table working on this legislation myself. And my position is the same as the Major City Chiefs Association, is that we support evidence-based changes that would occur, that would be fair to everybody involved moving forward, that is responsible. But at the end of the day, we have to hold all government officials accountable for their actions, whether it be police or any government official, to make sure that they're doing exactly what they want to do. But at the end of the day, we also have to support our police officers that are doing the right job. If you have a police officer out there who acts within their training, who is doing exactly what we've asked them to do, and they don't do it with malice, then we have to support them, even if there's potentially a mistake out there. But if you don't have any of that, then individuals do have to be held accountable.
Thank you, Chief Luna. Captain Steinbrenner, there have been a lot of perspectives with respect to what is wrong with the Sheriff's Department. And the question is, how would you make changes, and what will you do differently from the current sheriff that will incentivize the voters that we need a change in leadership?
First, it's the culture of the Sheriff's Department right now. There's so much negativity, and there's no transparency, and there's no honesty. He came in and he just destroyed what we've been working on for the last 20, 30 years. And so, first of all, it's building a relationship with the Board of Supervisors, building that credibility with the public. And it starts with taking ownership of our different stations, having unit commanders be engaged and take ownership of their stations, of their jails, putting the best foot forward, having our deputy personnel be trained to start from the academy. We need to have a better academy. Let me even back up. It starts with recruitment. We have to be diverse in our recruitment, and we can't just limit it to, we're just going to recruit from LA County. We have to go statewide. We have to go to the military. We have to get other minority and ethnicities involved in helping us to promote people to come to the Sheriff's Department. We have to have a mentorship program that starts in the high schools and in the colleges to get them excited about coming into the department. So I have to recreate the mentorship program. I have to recreate everybody's interest in coming to the Sheriff's Department. Once they're in the department, that they go through the academy, that they get quality training, and that we bring outside experts in. Then once they're in patrol and custody, that we encourage them to have an education, that they continue their education, that they go back to school, that we give them an incentive, that we do town hall meetings, that we're open and honest when there's an incident, that we put it out on our website. We talk to the media. We create a relationship with the media so that we don't have anything to hide. But it starts with the communication and putting the plan together and letting the people know what we're doing. I don't want to have secrets. And the biggest thing too is when I'm asked something, I'm going to provide a justification. I'm going to provide support for it. So when you talk about hiring, what our stats are, if you talk about what's the problem situation with the vaccine and the fear that we're going to lose 4,000 employees and how is that going to affect public safety, I'm going to tell you that I don't foresee that happening, because if you lose 4,000 employees, it's going to take 14 years to recoup just those 4,000 employees. But not just throw out numbers, but give you a standing of where we're at. When it comes to fiscal accountability, I want to have a virtual checkbook so that people can see where our money is going, because this is taxpayer money. So whatever the topic is, I will be very available, approachable. I'll have the facts. There'll be a justification, and there'll be an opportunity for the public or the community or business owners to respond back and ask, okay, what's going on? The other thing is I'm going to rebuild partnerships with all the other municipalities. I'm also going to work to become the director of the emergency management, again, a position that the sheriff lost, especially when it's in crisis, because if there's an emergent situation, we have to be available, or the sheriff has to be available to handle it. And people have to have that sense of confidence and that sense of being able to trust. And when I can build the trust, the level of communication and the confidence back, then we're on the road to revitalizing and recreating a sheriff's department that we can all be proud of.
Thank you. We're a little bit after the hour. I want to make this all even. So Chief Vera, I'm going to give you a question as well, just to kind of round it all out. And the question is, and Captain Steinbrenner brought it up, how does a potential decrease in 4,000 employees in the Sheriff's Department impact our city and the business community?
Let's have an honest conversation. I do not believe we're going to lose 4,000 deputy sheriffs. Unfortunately, I think this has been another opportunity by the incumbent to exacerbate and feed on emotions. Currently, in the department, the great majority of your deputy sheriffs and professional staff members are either vaccinated, have a medical or a religious exemption, or are testing weekly. The numbers are like less than 200 that don't fall in those categories. I don't believe that the Board of Supervisors intends to conduct mass terminations. The problem is that the sheriff, utilizing this on such a divisive position that he's taken, he has really got a lot of the deputies to believe and buy into the us versus them mentality, that unless he's there to protect them, they're all going to get terminated. This horrors are going to happen. The community, our elected officials, are against law enforcement. That's not the truth. The truth of the matter is that he has been that divisive person, probably has led to all of us running for sheriff right now. And I just don't see any possible scenario that LA County's firing 4,000 people, because the reality is that we have fiduciary responsibilities. We have a consent decrees that the DOJ holds us accountable to. We have contracts with cities like West Hollywood that we would be in default if we didn't provide those services. And the board is very much aware of those issues. So I think that if we had a different sheriff, this would not be a topic. Our numbers would be much lower. And I think that as we're progressing in this issue, you're never going to see the level of terminations that is being talked about. And quite frankly, if we see any at all. So I do want to try to put you at ease a little bit. I have 2 kids that are on the job today, and I that work patrol at Century Station, a daughter and a son. And I can tell you this, that I'm not concerned for their employment, because I just don't see that is what the end game is for the Board of Supervisors right now.
Thank you. It is 6 minutes after. I do really want to be respectful of your time. There are so many great questions still left. I ask that you, or if you have a representative in the room who can put your contact information, your URL, so that our attendees can learn more about your platforms and also contact you with some of these questions. I guess it was a little ambitious to think that we could do this within an hour. Public safety is such a big topic, and it is so very important. You know, everyone wants to feel safe. And so we could probably do half a day of questions, but I'm going to let you get back to your day. Again, if you could please put your information in the chat. I want to thank everyone who is joining us both live and on YouTube. I want to acknowledge my board, some of whom I see on the attendee list. We have President of the board, Rob Wallace. We also have the Heritage Committee Chair, Torrin Floyd, as well as Heritage Committee member, Kristen Tomasino. I want to thank you all for the great work for this on this forum. This is actually our first candidate forum. I was super excited about it. I thank you all so much for making the time to be here. We're going to have you back. We're going to have to, because this was absolutely amazing. And we do still have a lot of questions, but again, I'm going to just kind of keep doing this and stretching it out so everyone has time to put their information in the box. You all have my contact information, so please reach out to me if you have any questions or you need anything. I'm always happy to help. And I think everyone's had a chance to put their information in the box. Is that what I'm seeing here? Let me give it just one more moment. Thank you all again, candidates. I really, really appreciate you being here. And with that, so ends our program for today. Please go to laglcc.org to see some of our other upcoming programming. And until next time, again, thank you all so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Marquita.
much for having us.
Have a great evening. It was a great
you.
program.
Thank you.
Thank you.